All right. Looks like we've got quite the stack of reading material here about oceans, an encyclopedia, scientific articles, even some personal notes.
Someone's been doing their homework.
Yeah, definitely. But don't worry, we're not going to try to cram you full of every single fact.
No, no. The goal here is to pull out those most fascinating and useful insights from what you've got.
Exactly. So think of us as your, I guess you could say, ocean-savvy guides.
That's a good way to put it.
So uh, let's start with the basics. Your encyclopedia has, like a good Oceans 101.
Yeah.
Like, did you know over 70% of our planet is actually covered in ocean?
It's a lot of water.
It is a lot of water. And it's all connected, too.
Right. It's not just like separate bodies. You've got the Pacific, the Atlantic, Indian, Arctic, and Southern Oceans, all working together.
Like a giant engine, almost.
Exactly. Driving weather patterns, regulating temperatures. I mean, really, life on Earth depends on it.
Speaking of the Atlantic, I was reading that it's actually getting wider.
Oh, yeah. About an inch every year.
An inch? How's that even possible?
Well, it's because of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It's a chain of underwater volcanoes.
Volcanoes under the water.
Yeah, and they're creating new crust, pushing the ocean floor apart.
So is that happening everywhere?
Not exactly. The Atlantic doesn't have a lot of those, what are they called, subduction zones?
Where the ocean floor kind of dives back down.
Right. So the Atlantic just keeps growing.
Wow, that's incredible. Millions of years from now, imagine how different the coastlines will look.
It really makes you think about these things we think of as permanent, always changing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So your encyclopedia, it also breaks down the different layers of the ocean.
Uh-huh. Based on depth and how much light can get through.
Right. So you have like the sunlit zone, the twilight zone.
And then the dark zone.
It's like traveling to different worlds.
It really is. I mean, you start in the sunlit zone, and it's full of life we're pretty familiar with, dolphins, coral reefs.
Right, right.
But then you go deeper into the twilight zone, just a little bit of light getting down there, and things get kind of spooky.
Spooky how?
Well, think about the anglerfish. Uses that bioluminescent lure to attract prey.
In the dark.
Yeah, it's a whole different world down there, all kinds of crazy adaptations.
And then even further down, the dark zone. No sunlight at all.
Exactly. That's where you find things like the viperfish. Crazy teeth on that thing. Perfect for snatching a meal when they're hard to come by.
I can't even imagine the pressure down there, let alone trying to find food in pitch black.
Yeah, surviving down there is all about efficiency. Your encyclopedia talks about this thing called the greatest migration on Earth.
I don't think I read about that.
It's incredible. Like trillions of lanternfish and other creatures too, they travel up from the depths to feed every single night.
Up to the twilight zone?
Yeah, and then before dawn, they head back down.
Wow. That's a commute.
It really puts rush hour into perspective.
It does. And I guess, in a way, it all ties back to this idea of the food web, right? Like everything's connected.
Exactly. You've got these tiny phytoplankton at the surface.
They use sunlight for energy, like plants.
Yep, they're the base of it all. And then they get eaten by zooplankton, which then get eaten by small fish, and then bigger fish, and so on.
Until you get to the top predators.
Like sharks and whales. And everything depends on what's below it in the chain.
But as I was reading in some of these articles, it's a pretty fragile system, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. I mean, things like overfishing, pollution, those can have a huge ripple effect on the whole thing.
Right, and we're seeing the effects, like with those dead zones.
Where there's not enough oxygen for anything to survive. Scary stuff.
It is. Speaking of scale, one fact from the encyclopedia just blew my mind. It said that the total weight of krill in the Southern Ocean is actually more than the entire human population.
It's hard to even wrap your head around, isn't it? These tiny little creatures. But they're a keystone species. They support so much life.
Yeah, definitely not something we want to mess with.
No, definitely not.
All right, so we've talked about some of the, I guess you could say, the practical side of things.
Yeah.
But your encyclopedia also has all these incredible descriptions of, like, the more awe-inspiring stuff.
The wonders of the deep?
Exactly. Bioluminescent creatures, coral reefs, the Great Barrier Reef.
It's a whole other side to the ocean.
It is. Like, did you know that a quarter of all known marine species actually live on coral reefs?
It's amazing.
It is. And they only cover such a tiny percentage of the ocean floor.
Yeah, it's like this bustling underwater city full of life.
So those coral polyps themselves, They're pretty amazing, too. These tiny creatures building these massive structures.
Over generations, yeah. It's nature's own architecture.
And it's always changing, too, right?
Yeah.
Like with the formation of atolls.
Oh, yeah. So you have these volcanic islands that slowly sink beneath the waves.
Oh, hey.
But the coral keeps growing upwards towards the light.
So it forms a ring around the sunken island.
Exactly, creating these stunning lagoons.
Amazing. It's incredible how life finds a way. But we can't forget about, the impact humans are having on all of this.
Right, from exploration and trade to fishing and even just our everyday activities.
Yeah, your historical accounts and the articles, too. They paint a pretty clear picture of those challenges.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't always been the best stewards of the ocean.
There was this one detail from the encyclopedia that really stuck with me. It talked about how some northern shorelines are actually rising.
Oh yeah, by like 3 feet every century.
3 feet. Why is that happening?
It's called post-glacial rebound. Basically, the land is still bouncing back from the weight of glaciers that melted thousands of years ago.
Wow, so like some Viking ports from 1,000 years ago are now 33 feet above sea level.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about how much the Earth is constantly changing, even on a geological timescale.
And it makes me wonder, what other secrets are hidden beneath the waves, lost to time?
That's the beauty of the ocean, isn't it? There's always more to discover.
There is.
Yeah.
And so far, we've mainly focused on, the physical stuff and the biology.
Right, the science of it all.
But what about the cultural and spiritual side of things?
Oh, absolutely. The ocean has always held a special place in human history and culture.
I mean, think about all the myths and legends inspired by the ocean's mysteries.
Stories of sea monsters, mermaids, lost civilizations. There's a reason we're so drawn to it.
There is. It's a source of endless fascination. It's amazing to think about, those rising shorelines, those Viking ports lost to time. Makes you wonder what else is out there, hidden beneath the waves.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about those early explorers setting sail into the unknown. Talk about courage.
Yeah, like Bartholomew Dias, right? First European to sail around the tip of Africa. No maps, no guarantees, just the open ocean.
It's incredible. I mean, imagine navigating by the stars, facing storms, currents you don't even know about.
Makes you appreciate what they went through. But it wasn't just about adventure, right?
Yeah.
They had their reasons for being out there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, exploration, it always went hand in hand with, well, more practical things.
Like trade routes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Access to resources, expanding knowledge, like Ferdinand Magellan, the first to circumnavigate the globe. I mean, that changed everything.
It did. Suddenly we understood the oceans in a whole new way.
Yeah.
How they were all connected.
It wasn't just about conquering the seas anymore. It was about understanding them.
And that paved the way for, well, more scientific exploration.
Right, like the HMS Challenger expedition in the 1870s.
That was the first one dedicated entirely to studying the oceans, right?
It was, and it was groundbreaking. They measured depths, took water samples, discovered all these new species.
They even mapped the mid-Atlantic ridge, didn't they?
They did, and their findings, they actually helped confirm the theory of plate tectonics.
Wow. Revolutionized marine science. It's
Yeah.
like they opened up this whole new world that was hidden beneath the surface.
It really was a turning point. And then technology takes another leap forward.
With scuba diving and submersibles.
Suddenly, we could actually observe these creatures in their natural environment.
Instead of just, whatever we happen to catch in a net or find washed up on shore.
Exactly. We could see their behavior, how they interact.
It's like the difference between watching a nature documentary and actually being there.
It is. Your source has had some incredible images taken by scuba divers.
Those vibrant coral reefs, those encounters with dolphins.
Even whales.
And for those depths beyond the reach of scuba divers, well, there are submersibles.
Those things are technological marvels. They let us explore the abyssal plains, those deep ocean trenches.
Places where the pressure is immense. Perpetual darkness.
It's got to be both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
I know. Imagine being in one of those submersibles, descending into the unknown, seeing creatures that no human has ever laid eyes on before.
Pushing the boundaries of exploration. And it's led to some incredible discoveries.
Like hydrothermal vents?
Yeah, back in the 70s. Scientists aboard the Alvin, they discovered these underwater geysers, spewing superheated water full of minerals.
I remember reading about that. They sound so hostile, but then life actually thrives around them.
It was a total paradigm shift. They found these communities of organisms that rely on chemosynthesis
Using chemicals from the vents for energy.
instead of sunlight. It changed our whole understanding of where life can exist, how it can adapt to these, well, seemingly impossible conditions.
Makes you wonder what else is down there waiting to be discovered.
It does.
Speaking of secrets, your sources also talked about shipwrecks.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like these sunken vessels, they become these time capsules.
Offering glimpses into the past.
And the ocean, those cold, dark depths, they can preserve things incredibly well.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the Vasa, that Swedish warship that sank in, what was it, 1628?
And they salvaged it almost completely intact centuries later.
Yeah, and the Titanic, of course, its discovery in 1985, I mean, that captivated the world.
A reminder of the ocean's power and how fragile human life really is.
A sobering thought.
It is. But those shipwrecks, they also highlight how the ocean connects us to history.
They do.
And it's not just a source of, history and mystery. It's also a source of valuable resources.
Oh, absolutely. We've been extracting things like salt and sand from the ocean forever.
And more recently, offshore oil and gas.
And there's growing interest in those polymetallic nodules.
Those are found on the abyssal plains, right?
Yep, full of valuable metals like manganese and cobalt.
They sound promising.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of debate about deep-sea mining and its potential impact on the environment.
Yeah, it's a big concern. I mean, as we explore these new frontiers for resources, we have to be careful.
Weigh the benefits against the risks.
Exactly. We don't want to damage these delicate ecosystems.
It's about finding that sustainable balance. And speaking of sustainability, the ocean's also got potential as a source of clean energy, doesn't it?
Oh, huge potential. I mean, we're already seeing wind farms popping up along coastlines.
Harnessing the power of ocean winds.
And there's a lot of research going into tidal energy, wave energy as well.
It's fascinating how the ocean might actually offer solutions to some of the problems we've created.
It is.
And, of course, we can't forget about the most obvious resource, seafood.
Fishing has been vital for humans since, well, forever.
From those small-scale fishing communities to these massive commercial operations.
The ocean provides food for billions of people around the world.
But overfishing is a major concern, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we're taking fish out faster than they can replenish themselves.
And that threatens the whole ecosystem.
It's a classic tragedy of the commons. If we don't manage this resource responsibly, well, we risk losing it.
For future generations.
That's why marine conservation is so crucial.
So what can we do? Your sources mentioned marine protected areas, sustainable fishing practices, reducing pollution. Seems like a daunting task.
It is a big challenge, but there are things we can all do, even if we don't live near the coast.
Things like reducing our carbon footprint,
Choosing sustainable seafood,
supporting those organizations that are working to protect the ocean.
even just raising awareness among friends and family.
It's good to know that we can all contribute, even in small ways.
We can. It all adds up.
So it seems like this deep dive has revealed this really complex relationship between humans and the ocean.
It has.
One that's both beneficial and potentially destructive.
We rely on the ocean for so much, but we also have this responsibility to protect it.
And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I think we're going to explore some of those more, I guess you could say, awe-inspiring aspects of the ocean.
The things that really spark our curiosity and remind us why it's so important to protect it.
It's incredible. Even with all the challenges we've talked about, the ocean still has this power to just capture our imagination.
Oh, it does, absolutely. I mean, even with all our technology and all the exploration we've done, it still holds this, element of mystery.
Right. I mean, think about all those myths and legends about sea monsters, mermaids, lost cities under the waves.
Yeah, those stories, they really speak to something deep within us, this fascination that's been around for centuries.
It's amazing to think that even now, with all our scientific knowledge, there's still room for that awe and mystery. And then you look at the encyclopedia and you see these amazing pictures of creatures that seem like they're straight out of those legends.
Yeah, they're incredible.
Like those bioluminescent jellyfish that look like underwater fireworks.
Oh, bioluminescence, that's one of the most fascinating adaptations in the deep sea.
It is.
It's used for attracting mates, luring in prey, even confusing predators.
And the variety of displays is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, from those flashing lights of lanternfish to the eerie glow of anglerfish lures. It's really something else.
I'm particularly fascinated by those deep-sea fish with all their bizarre adaptations.
Oh, yeah, they're incredible.
Some of them look like they belong in a sci-fi movie.
They do?
Like the gulper eel with its enormous mouth. It can swallow prey larger than itself.
Oh, yeah, the gulper eel. That's a great example of how life adapts to those extreme conditions down there.
I mean, food is scarce in the deep sea.
Yeah, so when a meal comes along, you gotta be ready, no matter the size.
That's taking eyes bigger than your stomach to a whole new level. And then there are those ecosystems around hydrothermal vents, just teeming with life in an environment that seems completely
It's
impossible.
incredible, right?
Like those giant tube worms, how do they even exist?
It's amazing. Hydrothermal vents, they're like these oases in the deep sea desert.
And they're fueled by chemosynthesis, right?
Exactly. And they support this whole array of life. Giant tube worms, blind crabs, those weird hairy snails.
All thriving in a place that would be toxic to almost anything else.
It really is incredible.
Makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about where life can exist.
It does. It really highlights the incredible diversity and adaptability of the ocean.
And speaking of diversity, your scientific articles also talked about whale falls.
Oh yeah, whale falls. That's when a whale dies, and its carcass sinks down to the ocean floor.
Kind of morbid, but fascinating.
It is, and it creates this temporary but incredibly rich ecosystem.
Attracting all kinds of scavengers and decomposers.
From miles around.
Like a feast for the deep sea. And some of those scavengers are pretty specialized, aren't they?
Oh yeah, like those bone-eating worms. They feast on the whale's skeleton.
It's wild. But I guess whale falls also give scientists this unique opportunity to study, decomposition and how these ecosystems form in the deep sea.
They do, and they're a reminder that even in death, a whale contributes to this interconnected web of life.
It's a sobering thought, but also kind of beautiful in a way. So we've gone from the sunny surface to the depths of the abyss. We've explored the incredible diversity of life, the challenges facing the ocean, and the potential solutions. What does it all mean? What are the big takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that the ocean is absolutely essential to our planet. I mean, it regulates the climate, it provides us with food and resources, and it continues to inspire us.
But it's facing these unprecedented threats, right? From human activity.
It is, unfortunately.
And those threats, like climate change, pollution, overfishing, they're not just abstract concepts.
They have very real consequences for marine life, coastal communities, all of us, really.
And yet, your sources also talk about the resilience of the ocean and this growing movement to protect it.
There is hope. I mean, we have the knowledge, the technology, and there's a growing awareness of these issues. We can make a difference.
So it sounds like there's a sense of urgency, but also a lot of hope for the future.
That's a good way to put it.
So marine protected areas, sustainable fishing practices, reducing our carbon footprint, these are all things that can help.
They are. And it's not just up to governments and big organizations to make these changes. Individuals can play a role, too.
So what can we do in our everyday lives to help?
Well, we can choose sustainable seafood, reduce our plastic consumption, support organizations that are working to protect the ocean.
Those everyday choices, they can add up.
They do. When millions of people are making those choices, it can have a real impact.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm definitely left with this renewed sense of wonder about the ocean
Me too.
and a much deeper understanding of its importance to, well, everything.
And as you continue to learn about the ocean through your research, your experiences, just remember that interconnectedness
Right, we're all part of this ecosystem.
and our actions, they have ripple effects.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of oceans. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.